It's wild to think that supernatural stamina effects only date back to Amonkhet 2017 in a game that has been running since the early 90s. Now yes, regenerate effects have existed in the game pretty much since the beginning, although Death Ward was in white because regeneration involves the creature not actually leaving the battlefield. Horror of Horrors is the first regenerating target black creature whenever you want card in black, but all of these cards are different to the modern Graveyard Flicker, the king of which is not dead after all. These Graveyard Flicker cards are part of a type of design that Magic really excels at more than a lot of other games. Lenticular design, as it's called by Marrow and WotC Design generally, where the power of a card is not as it appears initially. A new player might look at a card like Death Ward and a card like Undying Malice and see pretty much the same sort of thing, think that Undying Malice is a bit weaker, which is why it comes with the additional +1/+1 counter, despite being ostensibly the same mana cost. Because a creature that leaves the battlefield has its auras or its equipments fall off, or other +1/+1 counters that you've put onto it. But becoming an experienced Magic player is a journey of learning the parts of the rules where abuse and breakage are rife. And one of the most common categories of rule breaker is effects that allow cards to quickly change zones, allowing them to become a new game object. If you're not familiar with the term, here's the simple version. Magic tracks everything, but for now we're primarily going to focus on cards as game objects. And in order for the game, especially the paper game, to not become an information tracking rules nightmare, it has to at some point say, when something goes through a change, all of the information falls off it. And in this specific case, a creature which leaves the battlefield in any way is no longer the same creature that you had on the battlefield. The game says, okay, we've deleted the creature that was on the battlefield, and now there's a creature that's in the graveyard. And we can briefly track that it moved from here to here, but once we have resolved this bit of tracking, we're done. We're not keeping track of that anymore. We're not having counters or other modifying effects go to the graveyard. We're just not tracking it because the whole point here is that it's moved over one threshold. So then if it moves to the hand or to the library or back to the battlefield, we don't have to worry about any of the past information. And this can be counterintuitive for new players, especially with these specific kinds of effects that take a card that's changed zones and put it back where it was immediately. The instinct is to treat that card as the same card, keeping all of its effects on it, keeping all of the tracking, all that sort of stuff. But game designers and rules lawyers know the truth, that it is much less complicated to just say, this is a new thing. And those designers are making that call fully knowing that there are going to be edge cases that are not at all what makes sense intuitively. And these edge cases are where you find the secret strength of these cards. Step 1. You cheat a creature onto the battlefield, using one of the many effects that have a rider that causes you to sacrifice it either at the end of turn or even immediately. Step 2. You respond to the sacrifice trigger with Not Dead After All. The creature dies as it's supposed to, but then another triggered ability happens which brings it back. This new creature, being a new game object, doesn't have the sacrifice rider that the old one did. I've had so many versions of this argument over my years of playing the game. Evoke creatures that are supposed to sacrifice themselves on entering the battlefield. People say that I'm supposed to get another enters trigger from the creature, but then it should sacrifice itself immediately again, right? Nope! And also why grief is banned in Modern. I sneak attack something onto the battlefield, death flicker it when it dies during my end step. My opponents then argue that at the beginning of the next end step, I should sacrifice it again. Nope! Designer having a lot of fun building different versions of Undying Malice with set mechanic, and Not Dead After All is the best one. And it's probably going to be the best one for a long time, for a relatively simple reason. It generates a rectangle. Rectangle is a parlance you'll see limited players using to shorthand any card or token, because in limited play there is an ongoing discussion of how much text needs to be on anything that is generated that is an independent rectangle for it to be considered card advantage. Food tokens are absolutely card advantage, especially in a set like, say, Bloomburrow, where you're sacrificing those food tokens for effect. I mean, in Bloom Burrow, they literally had an exchange rate of 3 cards in your graveyard to 1 food token. Wilds of Eldraine tried to really push the limit of a rectangle as card advantage by having roll tokens be a rectangle that you didn't necessarily get if you already had one on your creature. But in practice, this just made rolls a more powerful rectangle than food tokens usually are, because they had a rarer card type to be rapidly generating enchantment. And sometimes you could even use them for the ever elusive when a rectangle leaves the battlefield trigger. Not Dead, after all, is a spell that wants to be in decks where you're sacrificing rectangles. So naturally, the best version of this effect would be a version that gives you the most rectangles per spell. Until end of turn, target creature gains. When you do the thing your deck is meant to do, bring it back, make a rectangle, like, and subscribe.